In my work as a Black journalist, the gatekeepers have always been white. When you tell Black and brown stories through that lens, an erosion happens. Even the most well-meaning white person will never tell our stories how we tell our stories.
Jeneé, welcome to the Color Conversation. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So just let's unpack a few things here. How has 2020 been for you?
I think it's flying by the seat of my pants on fire. Trying to find little pockets of joy. I think this is like a year of collective grief and also collective exhaustion.
All right. And how's Boston treating you?
Everyone's inside for the most part now that it's winter again. So I just, mind my business and stay hydrated. It's a great place to tell stories, and it's the Black community here is rich and beautiful. And the one thing about the pandemic is New England has lots of adventures to navigate outdoors. So at least when the weather was nice, there is lots to see and do. And dancing with nature is always a easy way to joy.
Absolutely. It keeps you grounded. I've been doing a lot of that myself. It's interesting having seen some of your previous photos and works. I was expecting you to have braids. I'm not disappointed. I'm not disappointed.
I just took them out last week. You gotta let the scout
breathe.
So they'll be right back after I'm done taking this brief respite.
So is that your look, or is it just functionality, or what's?
It's a little bit of both. I think we've all been joking. A lot of fellow Black women have been joking amongst ourselves about pandemic braids and kind of it being, functionality. But there's also, I think, there's something deeply beautiful about braids. And I love my big natural curly hair. I love natural Black hair, period. But I do think when I have my braids, there's something very regal about them that I love. That kind of on the day when the hours stretch into days and stretch into weeks of not being able to hug or see another person, somehow my braids feel like a companion. Like I look at them, I'm like, yeah, girl, you're still here. So I don't know, my posture is a little different. It's
it's like a crown you wear.
Yeah, it's a crown. So, and I do the same thing with my big curls, my lion's mane. But yeah, so I mean, I love it both ways. But being the braids definitely. We're in it for the long run in 2020.
Absolutely. So one of the things that stands out to me is that, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but you're obviously very Black. Because I'm reading it, I'm reading your bio and it's just Black lives, Black womanhood, Black Lives Matter, obviously. Norfolk State, obviously, is very Black. And Kansas City is also very Black. So
you gotta give love to Norfolk State, like Spartans.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean that's and even after watching your work, am I feeling the vibe of just like all this Afro, this Africanness, this Black Americanness, this African Americanness coming, permeating through the screen with you. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I mean, I'm just me.
It's unabashed too. It's just kind of, it's not necessarily in your face, but it is unabashed. You're proud of it.
I'm very proud. I think, I feel like I was growing up, I was definitely taught to shrink myself and to kind of like, be seen and not heard. And I think, there was this whole like, I think the mixed girl rite of passage, like, is she Black enough? Is she white girl, blah, blah, blah. And I never felt white. I never tried to be white. Like, I've always been this, and this is who I am. And I think growing up around the women I grew up around, my aunties and my cousins and people I went to school with in high school, especially in high school. I went to high school in Norfolk, Virginia, at Lake Taylor, and I lived in a neighborhood called Ocean View, which is now gentrified into condos. The street I lived on don't even exist. They just paved right over it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's something so beautiful. Like, to me, those were always the queens. Those were the crowns, like the girls in the hood with the Coach bags and like the door knocker earrings, the bamboo earrings. Like, to me, those were like iconic women who gave me, like my Aunt Ellen gave me my first Maya Angelou book. So I don't know, like those are the type of women I looked up to, the women who weren't ashamed or afraid to be themselves. And I feel like because some members of my family didn't think I was Black enough, and some members of my family thought I was too Black and was ashamed to be related to me, I just had to get to a place where I was confident in myself and confident in who I am. And, you know, I think every year got, you know, me coming into myself, like all of us do. You know, we're all like, everyone was like Kendrick Lamar says, everyone focuses on a butterfly. We're all caterpillars many times in our lives. And I think each time I went into my cocoon, I came out a little stronger and a little more confident and unapologetic about my Blackness. And I think when you're around white people who are so uncomfortable with your melanin and uncomfortable with you talking about Black culture, it forces you to kind of claim that and like be like, no, you're gonna deal with, like, I'm not gonna hide myself for you. I'm not gonna continue to shrink for you.
Right.
So I just think that just got bigger and bigger. Growing up with a different world, like I grew up with a different world and living single, like I wanted to be Khadijah. And, you know, those are all strong Black women on those shows.
Mm-hmm.
And going to Norfolk State, which is just behold all the beautiful Black women.
Absolutely.
So it's just, yeah, like I don't know. I mean, and Blackness is many things, and some of it, you know, it could be Carlton on the Fresh Prince.
Of course.
You know?
Absolutely. We're not a monolith.
Yeah, we're not a monolith. We give you many things. This is just my Blackness, but I love all of our Blackness.
Absolutely. Now, so you're from Norfolk, is that it?
No, I'm from Alexandria, but I went to high school and college in Norfolk. I had one of those we get evicted families. So
is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so we moved a lot, and I ended up going to high school in Norfolk, Virginia.
That's not close to Alexandria. That's kind of far.
Oh, but my mom had family in Virginia Beach, so
I see. Okay.
Like a financial situation that didn't quite work out how she thought it would work out, so we ended up in Norfolk.
No, I get it. I totally get it. So tell me, or tell the audience about, is this your newest project, A Beautiful Resistance?
Yes. So A Beautiful Resistance is a series. This is our first season, and it focuses on Black joy and Black lives, and particularly in New England. And I think it's just really beautiful. I get so tired of stories of Blackness being told through the lens of injustice.
Right.
And that's a real thing. I mean, I cover often identity and social justice through the lens of culture and art. So I cover inequity a lot, but that's not who we are. That's like part of our story. It's not our whole story. This year, we're in the next chapter of the revolution. You know, I went to George Floyd's funeral in Minneapolis. I covered it. And when I got back, I was just emotionally depleted. Like, we couldn't hug anybody. You know, I live alone. And I got back from Minneapolis, just me and my dog. And I needed a way to wrap my arms around Black people. And for people to know we're not just these dead bodies. We're not 8 minutes of lynching. We're not, that is part of our story. That is what America does to us, but that cannot define us. And I'm tired of media organizations resting on that to be their sole representation. It's like that, athletes, celebrity, in stories of inequity. It's never, unless it's like the lone story of rags to riches. Like, look at this extreme Black excellence, as defined by Burden. So I wanted a way to tell our stories through the lens of joy. Like, we're fully dimensional human beings. And one of the most beautiful things to me about being Black is that even on our worst days, we always find a way to laugh. Like, you know, our funerals is like tears, and then there's food and dancing. It always ends up being some kind of like celebration of life. Even on when, one of my most comforting things to do is when catastrophe happens, to go to Black Twitter, because I know that someone is going to make a meme about it that's going to like break some of the grief and despair and help us laugh a little. And I'm just like, we have such a beautiful strength in our joy, and it is a form of resistance. And, there's people who've done this work on joy as a form of resistance, Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and Adrienne Marie Brown. Like, there's all these people who have always talked about, slaves sang. They sang partly because there was messaging in it, but they also sang for their faith and for their joy and for their solidarity. Like, Sojourner Truth even said, like, life is a hard battle anyway. And if we laugh and sing a little as we fight the good fight for freedom, it makes it all go a little easier. So, that's what this project is all about. The first season is 6 visual episodes, kind of like little short films, 10 to 12 minutes, 6 different subjects from all over New England. And every week, I kind of like to call it a mixtape. Because you get a short film, you get a written story, you get a Q&A, and you get a playlist.
I saw the playlist, yeah.
The playlist is curated by hip hop historian Dart Adams.
I saw that, yeah.
So I feel like I'm dropping these hot mixtapes every week. So it makes me, it's like reliving the 90s, and like waiting for that next DJ clip.
Okay.
But yeah, no, like today is our final part, and we're already sketching out the second season. I don't want anyone to think this is a one-off. This is going to be work that continues. And the thing is, this is work Black journalists have always done. It's not like I've never done profiles of Black people before. I think what makes this different is there's space for it. There's branding for it. There's multiple layers to it. And it's getting placement. It's getting like centerpiece placement. Where oftentimes in legacy media, our stories don't get that type of, not these types of stories. Our stories that get the placement are often like the ones that are told through the lens of the burden and the suffering. So I think that's what makes this a little different, but I would never erase the work that Black journalists have always done and Black newspapers have always done.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the first episode was about, I think water is Black resistance, right?
Yeah, water is a beautiful resistance.
Water is a beautiful resistance, right. And that took place where?
Martha's Vineyard.
Okay. So tell the audience about your first experience on Martha's Vineyard.
It was beautiful and amazing. And honestly, it was kind of like a dream come true for me, because I saw the Inkwell when I was a teenager. And, I'd always wanted to go to the Inkwell after I saw that film. And I know it wasn't filmed on the Vineyard, but it is supposed to be the Vineyard. And when I finally got to go there, I literally was almost in tears, because
oh, wow.
There's just something that feels so good there. There's few places that I have felt the way I feel there. I feel that way when I go to New Orleans. There's just something very, kind of like we started this conversation, you were like very Black. There's just something very Black about New Orleans.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's in the air. Even even if you go to places where it's like a bunch of white people, there's something that it still feels just in the air, Blackness. That's kind of how I feel about that little stretch of the Inkwell. It's like, even when I saw white people, it just didn't, it was like, this is ours. Like there's something about it just felt like it belongs to us. And, I don't know if it's because so much of us is water. We were brought here by water. I just feel like our ancestors are there kind of still talking to us. So I loved it there. And I wanted to tell that story because I don't feel like Bostonians tell that story. And it's a New England story. Right. And it's not one that gets told. And I think it's because when we talk about Black history, we don't often frame it through the lens of luxury, beauty, beaches, and nature. We frame it through like strife and like, someone overcame something really bad. And I'm like, this is space that belonged to, like, people bought land here at a time when we couldn't buy a lot of land, and built a community here. And now it's like, we deserve beaches and luxury too. Like, and those places like that, places like the Inkwell and Sag Harbor and other Black, beaches across the country, the very few that there are, they're getting gentrified, they're getting taken from us. So we should celebrate them and try to protect them and preserve those stories as often as possible. So that was kind of the inspiration for the first episode. There's a young woman named Mercy Bell, and her brother bought a home in Vineyard Haven to start a legacy there. They grew up much like me, like a home and stable, like moving all the time. So they want to make it to where no one in their family ever has that experience again. Like they could always have the house in the vineyard, like the house won't get sold. It'll that generational stability.
This is not utopia, this island, but there are elements of it that are utopian. And one of them is liberated Black and brown bodies on the beach. This island doesn't have a perfect history, and there's been taking of land and taking of people here, but there's been a reclamation as well. This is a story of Black homeownership. For my brother, when he said we're buying a house, I understood what he actually meant. He didn't mean we were buying a house. He said we're gonna have a place to stay, and we're gonna have a place to stay together. And for our family, that's never happened. We've never had a single place where we can all be. We've never broken that generational curse of like evictions and dealing with housing instability. Like this was it. This was like the moment we were gonna have a space for us.
All right, so the next one, I think episode 3 is about, what's that about?
Episode 3 is Protest is a Beautiful Resistance. And that episode centers OJ Slaughter. They are a fine arts photographer who covered just about every single protest in Boston this summer, and also the March on Washington. And their photography frames us truthfully. So it's not like, oh, looters and shooters. It's like people saging, people dancing, people peacefully standing there while the police are like charging them. It's the narrative that I feel like the media doesn't want to embrace, because it's easier and more salacious to tell a story of destruction and dissent versus a story of people finding each other and fighting for each other in the streets. So I really wanted to center their work, kind of making sure the whole story of what protest looks like and feels like.
You've literally captured protest summer in the pandemic and the next chapter of the revolution through your lens.
My eyes are my tool. My camera is an extension of that tool. And while my camera allows me to tell stories, my eyes allow me to see them. And when I say that, I don't mean just like witness, but to be a part of. If anything, my camera allows me to have a shield from what's actually happening. So my eyes that go home and have to replay all these moments that allow me to edit the photos as they were actually seen. I am so sick of watching documentaries that are told by old white men. And I'm so sick of watching documentaries that don't accurately tell these stories from the perspective of the communities that are actively experiencing them.
It was 4th of July. And again, I was tired. It had, we're coming off, June was such a hard month for all of us. And I was like, I'm going to the protest on 4th of July. I'm not covering it. I'm not writing about it. I am protesting. This is gonna be a day I'm gonna enjoy. That photo was taken when I was in the middle of cheering on brown skinned women dancing to Brown Skin Girl by Beyoncé. And if in the photograph, their hands are kind of doing this towards me. And it's because they were saying, no, come join us, come dance with us.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it was just like this amazing act of sisterhood and solidarity. And OJ happened to, I guess, be there and capture it. And I didn't know that it was even happening, but that moment meant so much to me. And weeks later, someone tagged me on Instagram, like, at Sincerely Jeneé. And I looked, and sure enough, like, there's that picture of that moment. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I'm like looking at all of OJ's work. I'm like, I like, this is amazing. This work is amazing. OJ took some of the most iconic pictures by Ayanna Pressley and Cornel West this summer. OJ takes photos with another photographer named Philip Keith, and they have taken amazing pictures of some of the most celebrated Black voices this summer.
Okay, excellent. And the last one was episode 5, because you guys are wrapping up 6 now. So episode 5.
Oh no, episode 5 is to be Black, Bostonian, and proud is
right.
The resistance, because the narrative in the narrative in the whole country is, oh, Boston's so white and Boston's so racist and Black people don't live in Boston. But Boston is 25% Black, which is twice the Black population of America. Like, this is actually like a place where there are a lot of Black people and from all over the diaspora. There's a huge Black immigrant community here, and there's a huge Black American community here. And I think it has to do with Boston being complicit and happy to be known as a white city
Interesting.
versus acknowledging how many Black people are here and like telling their stories too. So what happens is people who are Black and from here feel erased, they feel overlooked. And they're also kind of like, to outside, Black people are like, ooh, Boston. So the Black people who are from here are like, wait a minute, we're here. Like, we live here, we like our city. So I wanted to do a story kind of celebrating the Black people here and why they love this city and how this city, there is racism here, just like there's racism everywhere. And there's problems here. But there's also a beautiful Black community here that's been here for generations, and they matter, and they love and they laugh just like the rest of us, and they deserve to have that space.
Okay.
And I think because there's this stigma of ill Boston, or ooh, Boston's so white, just to be Black and proud to be a Bostonian the way any of us would be proud of our native city is a resistance, because everyone's like, oh, you need to hide that you're from there, or you need to move, or why do you live there? So I wanted to give this space, and Dart Adams is one of the proudest Black Bostonians I've ever met in my life. And he also is a hip hop historian who is well known throughout the underground hip hop scene. And he's been writing on OK Player and various websites for years. So to have him tell the story of Boston, particularly Roxbury and the South End, was just very powerful.
How, in a city that you flat out told me has erased you and has erased, Black and brown people in your experience as you always say, a Black Tino, that's your word. How did you get this sense of pride?
The reason I'm so proud of where I'm from is because, one, it made me who I am, and it gave me the fortitude to be able to stand in a room and tell all these stories and have my voice. I got my voice partly from being erased and being told to be quiet all these times. Right here, there's a school, but right there used to be the home that Coretta Martin Luther King Jr. actually lived in after they got married.
Let's talk about this heartbreak right here.
But this became the new Harriet Tubman House.
And now they're tearing it down.
Yeah, now they're tearing it down. So, with gentrification, what happens is you have a whole new set of people that live here, and it doesn't provide the same thing for the community that it does for the one that was here before.
How'd you come up with your artists? Like, how did that happen?
So I've been covering, centering kind of Black life and people of color in Boston since I got here 2.5 years ago. And as a columnist, because I do cover a very specific like identity and social justice, there's some people that I don't always get to write about, but I meet them and I'm like, man, this is a story. So I kind of keep little notes. So it's like Dart, I've always wanted to write about, but I thought other people should write about Dart because I don't know him, but Boston is small and you kind of get to know various people. So I was like, oh, I don't know, like maybe someone else should do Dart's story. And then Shay Anderson, I met at a Changemakers conference. He walked right up to me and was like, hi, I'm Shay. Dope Jordans, because we both had on like Jordans. And
I noticed your sneaker game too. I have to say that I did a little research on the Google, and I was like, oh, she's a sneakerhead. Okay.
I am. So it's like he came up to me and introduced himself, and I was like, what is this like tall Manhattan brother doing at Worcester? Like he's from New York, and he's like telling me how he's using art to cultivate community. And I was like, this is a story. But Boston doesn't like to give Worcester love. So it's like, ooh, Worcester. So, and I'm like, bro, like there's beauty everywhere. We just gotta be willing to celebrate it. So Che is another person I had always wanted to profile and just never had a chance to. Mercy, this will be funny for you. So I wanted to do the Inkwell story for the anniversary of the Inkwell, which was like a year or two ago. And I wanted to like actually do something with you guys, with the African American Film Festival on Martha's Vineyard. And stuff happened in the back end over at my job that just, it didn't get to happen. And we never got to get far enough to even talking to you guys, and it's something I wanted to do really badly. And I had started doing the early work, and I had met Mercy actually at a gym, non-work hours. Like, I'm at a gym, and we started following each other on Instagram, as people do. And I saw that she was in the Vineyard all the time, but I knew she lived in Roxbury, and I was like, does she have 2 houses? Like, who is this person? So I hit her up and said, hey, can we have a conversation about the Vineyard? And I interviewed her for like 2 hours. And that was like only my second time seeing her. Like, my first time seeing her was when we met at the gym. My second time is like, hey, I'm interviewing you about the Vineyard. And she proceeds to tell me this amazing story about her brother, about growing up here in Boston, and memories of getting on the boat to go see her brother with her mom. And I was just like, this is like an amazing story. She's like, oh yeah, we bought this. How we put all our money together and got this house. And I was like, I want to do this story. And then I kept getting not pushback, but just like, let's wait and do it closer to this date and closer to that date. And then the season passed, and the film festival passed, and just things passed. And I was like, well, now I'll have to wait. And then the pandemic came, and I was like, well, now I'm definitely not going to get to do this.
Right.
And then when I came up with this idea, I was like, oh no, Mercy literally was the first person I called. I said,
oh,
hey,
nice.
I said, I know it's been a couple of years, but I have not forgot you. Like, let's make this happen. And so that's how Mercy came to be. OJ was just serendipity. Like, I got tagged in that photo, saw all of the work OJ and Philip Keith were doing. And I was like, this in itself is like this work in that art show. Like, I went to the art show of all of the work, the history of right now. And I was like, yeah, this, we got to tell this story.
Yeah.
There were other people that were planned for Maine and New Hampshire, but it's still a pandemic. So things changed and got shuffled around. But
I understand. So I was under the impression that A Beautiful Resistance was just for the like immediate Boston area, but it's for New England.
Yeah, it's for New England, period. It's like,
okay, cool. That's cool. That gives exposure to, as you said, Black people who are not struggling, but who are resisting, and maintaining their Blackness despite everything. And as you said, it puts them through a different lens. It's not struggle. It's just being me, just doing me.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
I mean,
that's super cool.
It's like just being ourselves. I think there's this like misconception that it has to be like fists in the air, or it has to be like fighting and strife and suffering. And I'm like, in this country, like, your film festival to me is a beautiful resistance. Like,
thank you.
Like, all of these things, like, if any day you're able to wake up and live your Black life and make it to bed at night and also manage to have a pocket of joy in this country, that is a resistance to me. It doesn't have to be these like big stories of overcoming brutality and poverty. It could just be actually being comfortable in your skin and living the life you want to live. Like, I never want to act like struggle isn't there. Struggle's there, racism there, oppression is real. But it's like, yeah, we got to talk about those things. But that's not all of it. And it's like, if you're only talking about the one part of it, you're not telling the whole story. And it's like, we got to get our story right. It's ours.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and also joy is powerful. Like, there's this Audre Lorde quote about the sharing of joy, lessening the difference between us, because it could be the basis of understanding. And I just think that's so true. I think it's part of why comedians before the era that we're in now were so successful, is because they used laughter as a way to tear down a lot of barriers. And I think there's some real, it's why music is so pervasive and being transgenerational and cutting through all the racial barriers, is because when people are sharing happiness and joy, it allows them to see you for your richness and the multitudes of you.
So what is coming down the pike for A Beautiful Resistance? What is the next incarnation of A Beautiful Resistance? What should we look for?
I mean, the Instagram is still going at A Beautiful Resistance. So every day we feature a different Black person and occasionally other people of color sharing their beautiful resistance. So that's still going to be going on daily in between seasons. after the season finale, like I said, each episode is 4 parts because you get the visual, you get the written, the Q&A, and the playlist. So today when we wrap that, we'll take a hiatus and I'll take a little vacation and come back in the new year and sketch out the second season. Well, I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping for the possibilities of a podcast. And so that way the podcast can run in between visual seasons so that we're never without new content. Mm-hmm. But yeah, really just thinking about more expand. We're going to have events. Hopefully we'll be doing events with you. So, we're going to have a Beautiful Resistance events and hopefully live streams. And one day when pandemic is over, we'll actually do in-person events again.
And what platform? I know you guys, Boston Globe has their own platform, obviously.
Yeah, bostonglobe.com/A Beautiful Resistance, Instagram @A Beautiful Resistance. We're also on YouTube. So
is it a column though? Is it in the paper, like on Sunday or?
So it doesn't have a specific day, but every single piece has run on the front page in print, but all various days, different days of the week. But
so every piece, so the water Beautiful Resistance was on the front page?
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
It was on it was the centerpiece Sunday print page, like front cover, the special Sunday, the coveted Sunday front page. So yeah, my Vineyard was the Sunday front page. All the rest of them have been other front pages.
So I could talk to you for another hour.
This was great. So
yeah, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. Hopefully in person.
I would love
and hopefully we'll be working with each other next year.
I look forward to that.
Okay, dynamite. And give the folks the what's it, bostonglobe.com.
.com/A Beautiful Resistance, Instagram.com A Beautiful Resistance, and
okay,
you can find me at Sincerely Jeneé.
Sincerely Jeneé. All right. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you today, Jeneé.
Thank you so much for having me.